everyone, I'm Melanie Yost with the Lansing Journal, standing here with Josh Bootsma, who is still our managing editor at this point.
At this moment, yes.
And this week's video, I think, is going to be kind of fun. We're doing a roundup of some of the highlights of Josh's career with the Lansing Journal.
Yeah, you asked me what some of my most memorable moments were. Moments and also meaningful stories that I was involved in writing. So, and not all of them have a direct physical location link to them, but we're going to do our best. And I'm really excited to show you some of these places. And of course, how could we start anywhere else but Santa House?
We're here at the Santa House because you had such a big. This was big news.
Yes.
You got the behind-the-scenes interview with Santa.
Yeah.
Right here at the Lansing Santa House.
A uniquely Lansing tradition here in this little house. Santa and Mrs. Claus here every December, and it was so fun to interview them. They were
the big guy.
As lovely as you can imagine, Santa and Mrs. Claus. So much fun. What are some of the weirdest Christmas gift requests that y'all have received? Do you recall?
Yes, a lot of people want live animals.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's hard for Santa to do that. One, it's too much for them to be on the sleigh. Rudolph does not like it at all.
Okay.
He will not go.
And
Skittish,
live
yeah.
animals are tough.
So I had to start here.
Right.
Kind of a lighthearted note. Yep, love it. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to grab this and we're going to start walking.
There's so much more than Santa.
There's so much more than Santa. There's so much we have to see. I'm excited to show you, Melanie, and to show you, viewers, a little bit of memory lane for me when I think of my time here at the Lansing Journal. So we've got a ways to walk.
Let's do it.
So, Melanie, something else that I'll never forget. We've had plenty of stories as we walk past the Lansing Library that have come out of the library, and you and I have done many things at the library, Lansing Journal related together. One of them definitely is the candidate forum that we did last year. That was just something that will always stick in my memory.
Yeah, that was a big deal for us. We spent a lot of time preparing for that, partly because it was such an important event for voters in Lansing.
Yes.
But it was a new kind of interviewing for us.
Yes.
We're used to asking questions, so that's not a big deal, but there were different restrictions on this kind of event.
Totally. Asking in like a live setting, like a live format, and maybe we didn't really do too much responding on the fly, but we kind of prepared to do that. It just took so much more preparation, and it was us flexing a different journalistic muscle than we are used to. So it was really good, though. I really enjoyed it.
Trustees are elected to staggered 4-year terms. So every 2 years, 3 trustee terms are finished and those seats become available. This year we have 4 candidates running for those 3 seats. So our goal for this forum tonight is to ask questions that will give the candidates an opportunity to share their qualifications.
What is one thing that you will do to make Lansing a stronger community if elected? Thank you for the time you spent here tonight providing thoughtful answers to the questions that are on the minds of the members of our community. It's now time for closing statements. And I think that the work that we put in really did make it as much of a benefit to residents as possible, and it seemed like people really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think you had a good vision for what this could be, and that really came together. The preparation paid off, and it was a helpful event. A lot of people attended it, but people also viewed it online. The library was very helpful to partner with. Yes. So yeah, this is one of my favorite stories of your tenure as well.
Yeah, it was a good time.
So that candidate forum story was one that required weeks of preparation. We spent a lot of time on that. But this other story on your list here required no preparation at all. It was very spontaneous.
That's right. My wife and I were coming home from we're walking along Torrance Avenue right now. We're coming home from an evening at church, and we just saw police lights, just solid police lights. So I pulled over on the street right up here and kind of had to check and see what was going on. And once I learned what was going on, that there was a manhunt actively in progress, I dropped my wife off at home, grabbed the camera, came back, and yeah, there was an active manhunt going on. There were more police presence than I'd ever seen here in Lansing.
Wow.
And that was, I want to say, 9:30 or 10-ish at night, and I was out for a few hours kind of talking to police officers. I would park and see a few officers talking, and I'd walk up to them and say, hey, you guys have any updates? What's going on? It was crazy.
You were really the man on the street. And
Yeah.
I was back home being sort of command central,
Right.
and you were feeding me information, and I was was on broadcast news too, so I was watching
Yeah,
that and telling
right.
you what I was learning from that.
Right.
And you were also, I think this was the first time we did multimedia coverage of a story.
Yeah, that's right.
You shot Facebook Live.
If you live anywhere near this area, you know that there's lots of activity that's been going on. There have been helicopters circling for on the better part of an hour. Lots of police activity behind me, as you can see. There are Cook County Sheriff, there's Lansing Police.
And that was a good way to get some information out as
Yeah.
fast as possible. But then when you came home, you wrote a story that I think published the very next morning.
I think so, yeah, because it was good to get the facts out, because what had originally been reported was very much different than
Right,
what
right.
it ended up being. So, yeah, I'll never forget being out here late on that December night in 2021. That was crazy.
Good memory.
Yes.
Glad you brought us here, Josh, at the TF South Red Wolves Stadium. To me, this symbolizes sports coverage and the growth that you brought to the Lansing Journal in this area. Sports coverage was, I think, the first request from our community.
Yeah.
People wanted us to cover Lansing sports, and we tried. We tried for a while, not very successfully. But then one of the things you brought to the Lansing Journal was very consistent sports coverage. You worked with Rich Dust to set up a schedule and contact all of the coaches here at TF South.
Yeah.
And that was important. And so you grew our sports coverage, and then you also convinced me that we needed better cameras in order to cover sports well, and other things too. So you really upped our game when it came to sports coverage.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think it did kind of illustrate why we needed some higher quality equipment. Things like, seeing high-speed plays made at night under the Friday night lights. And yeah, the drone we use. I bring out the drone too for Friday night lights, and got some video, some cool photos of the field. I have very fond memories of many different Friday night lights, some of them colder than others, some of them wetter than others, some of them went way long into the night, but yeah, there was a time where before Mike Clark joined us, where I was getting photos, and I was also trying to keep a general idea of what was happening in the game so I could write a story, made some relationships with the folks here at TF South to help with the statistics and all that, but yeah, definitely, this is a not one particular story, but a place that I spent a lot of time and enjoyed being here covering Lansing sports.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Well, Melanie, we're on Madison Street now in a neighborhood that looks like many other neighborhoods in Lansing. And they're just, I think what it comes down to for me is the most meaningful stories for me and the most memorable when I think back on my time is the ones that have to do with people who live in houses just like these, telling their stories, getting to know them, getting to just, exist with them, and that's the most valuable thing that I was able to do as part of the Lansing Journal.
And you've met some interesting people.
Absolutely, yeah. So on this street in particular, actually, Paul Schultz is the village historian. He lives here, and he was a long-time mail carrier in Lansing, and my favorite story that I've written for the Lansing Journal, it remains to this day, I believe, the longest one that we've ever published. And I was going to say for better or for worse. I think for better, the longest one that we've ever published.
It was a good story.
I got to talk with Paul at length about his experience being a mail carrier in Lansing, and I also talked with Aldo and Cindy Suley. Aldo has since passed away, but about his experience being a resident of Lansing, but carrying mail. He carried mail in Gary, Indiana. And it was just so fun and cool, and it was kind of written in a narrative style, and I hadn't done anything like that before. So that's still to this day my favorite story that I've written for the Lansing Journal.
And I remember that you struggled with how to intertwine those two stories
Big time.
Represent them well, and
Yes.
it did turn out well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just on the topic of people, I've got a few more that I wanted to mention. One was talking with Sharon Giles. I've developed a good relationship with Sharon over the years. She's a volunteer at the Lansing Community Food Pantry. She's in Common Ground. She does a bunch of things in the community, and I spoke to her. I think I had the idea just a few days before MLK Day, and we had seen her at a food pantry gathering or something, and we learned that she was in Chicago, living in Chicago at the time that MLK came to Chicago, and actually at one point briefly attended an event that he was at. And so I remember calling her up, I think it was a Saturday before MLK Day on the next Monday, and hearing about her story. And that to this day is the only interview, it was a phone interview, that I've cried during, is talking to Sharon.
So that's memorable.
So that's very memorable, about her experience living in the north side of Chicago and the kind of the segregated neighborhood, and her experience and the changes that she's seen and is encouraged by from a racial civil rights perspective in Lansing and the Chicago area. So definitely that's a memorable one for me.
So what made you cry about that?
It was when she was talking about how when she, back when she grew up and was a girl, she would see things like Nazi swastika burned into someone's garage, versus now, driving down the streets of Lansing, she sees little kids holding up signs that say "We care" and civil rights matter, and she's just seen a complete change. And she was particularly moved by, the youth getting involved in that way, and that's what made her emotional and made me emotional as well. So,
Nice.
Another story that was memorable for me was driving through a neighborhood not unlike this one. I saw a sign for a garage sale, and I love a garage sale as much as anybody. And I stopped, and there was so much stuff, and so I said to the woman at the garage sale, I said, "Well, you have so much stuff. Is this like a special occasion or something? Are you moving out?" And she said, "No, it's a fundraiser for my daughter." And I learned that's the first day that I learned about Super Tessie and her story that the Lansing Journal has since told a few different times. And that I remember, that first story was great. And then I was invited by the Avila family to drop by their house. They served me breakfast one day.
Wow.
I came in and talked to them, and they gave me updates on Tessie's situation. And I attended the fundraiser that they held back in November for her. So that was really special. So that was just really cool, getting to know their family and telling their story and sharing what was really a tragic thing that happened to them. But they have so much hope, and the community has kind of supported them too. It's really cool.
And you've really built connections with these people. Like you have relationships with these people now.
Yeah.
They trust you. You've gotten to know them.
Yeah.
In sharing their story, you've developed a relationship, and that helps the broader community develop a relationship with these people. So I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. It's been a real blessing to be able to do it, honestly. It's blessed me. I like to think that it's been a blessing to people too. So thank you. And then one last one that I wanted to mention, Melanie, was my time getting to know the Serrata family who fled Ukraine back when some of the war was first happening in Ukraine. And I got connected to them through some folks that through Jared Alleman, who I just happened to meet at the Lansing Starbucks, just working there. We just happened to meet each other, and that ultimately resulted in me getting to talk to Svitlana Sirata, who she and her family had come from Ukraine, and they were living in a house here in Lansing for some time. And we met at the Lansing Library, and we persevered through a very emotional interview, and she just was sharing with me the story of her family, tragic stuff, and just to meet someone who had experienced that and who was now living in Lansing and was very blessed and benefited by the Lansing community was just really special. So it was a real privilege to tell her story and meet her family.
And I think it's significant that that was another sort of chance encounter, because you are local. You were at the local Starbucks and you met another local person.
That's right.
And you can't, I suppose sometimes you can make arrangements for that kind of thing, but relationships happen organically, and that's one of the benefits of a local newspaper.
It sure is. It definitely has been a benefit of living here and working here and being part of the community. You understand what the needs of the community are. I know that some of my curiosities are the same as the very people who live here, right?
Yeah.
So, and this list that we've been going through, I had a huge list this morning when we had this idea to do this video. I went through so many old stories, and I had such a fun time walking down memory lane, so to speak. And we had to cut it down to things that we were able to walk to and get done in a day. But there are so many people that I've met and so many experiences that I've had that have been incredibly valuable.
Well, thank you, Josh, for taking us on this tour of some of your most memorable stories. I know this is not all of your most memorable stories.
Definitely.
You've written more than 1,000 stories for the Lansing Journal. So thank you for selecting a few that we could do this tour of.
Yes.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. It's been really a blessing for me to relive it, to share it with you, and hopefully you enjoy watching this too. Thank you for watching and coming down memory lane with us.